The Galactic Empire's warship, Eclipse of Dawn, descended through Earth's atmosphere like a shadow cast by a dying star. Its sleek, obsidian hull shimmered with the faint glow of ionized particles, a testament to the Empire's technological supremacy. Aboard the bridge, Admiral Valen stood tall, his crimson cape draped over his shoulders, a symbol of his rank and the Empire's unyielding dominance. His cold, calculating eyes scanned the planet below, a blue-green jewel that had somehow escaped the Empire's grasp for centuries. To him, Earth was nothing more than a primitive backwater, its inhabitants barely worthy of notice. Yet here he was tasked with bringing it to heel. The village of New Haven lay nestled in a valley, its modest homes and fields of golden wheat a stark contrast to the Empire's towering spires and sprawling megacities. It was a place untouched by the galaxy's wars, its people living simple lives far removed from the machinations of empires. Sarah Kane stood at the edge of the village, her hands calloused from years of tending the fields. She was a woman of quiet strength, her sharp green eyes reflecting a resilience that had been forged through hardship. Her father, Marcus Kane, had once been a name whispered in fear across Earth, but to her, he was simply the man who had raised her after her mother's death. He had left that life behind, seeking peace in the solitude of the countryside. Sarah had never asked about his past, and he had never offered to share it. The arrival of the Empire's warship shattered the tranquility of New Haven. The ground trembled as the ship landed just outside the village, its massive engines roaring like a beast awakened from slumber. Soldiers clad in black armor poured out, their plasma rifles gleaming in the sunlight. Sarah watched from a distance, her heart pounding as the soldiers marched into the village square. The villagers gathered, their faces pale with fear, as Admiral Valen stepped forward, his voice booming through the square. "People of Earth," he began, his tone dripping with condescension. "Your planet is now under the jurisdiction of the Galactic Empire. Resistance will not be tolerated. Swear allegiance to the Empire, and you may yet live." The villagers exchanged uneasy glances, but none dared to speak. Sarah, however, felt a fire ignite within her. She stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "This is our home," she said, her words cutting through the silence. "We won't bow to you." Valen's eyes narrowed as he regarded her. "And who are you to defy the Empire?" "I'm Sarah Kane," she replied, her chin held high. "And I won't let you take what's ours." For a moment there was silence. Then Valen smirked, a cruel twist of his lips. "Brave words," he said. "But bravery means little in the face of power." He gestured to one of his soldiers, who stepped forward and struck Sarah across the face with the butt of his rifle. She fell to the ground, blood trickling from her lip, but she refused to cry out. The villagers gasped, but none moved to help her. Valen leaned down, his voice a low growl. "This is your last chance. Kneel or die." Sarah looked up at him, her eyes blazing with defiance. "I'll never kneel to you." Valen straightened, his expression hardening. "Then you leave me no choice." He drew his sidearm, a sleek, black pistol, and aimed it at her head. The villagers cried out, but it was too late. The shot rang out, echoing across the valley. Sarah's body crumpled to the ground, her lifeless eyes staring up at the sky. The villagers stood in stunned silence, their fear giving way to a simmering rage. Valen holstered his weapon, his expression one of cold indifference. "Let this be a lesson to all who defy the Empire," he said before turning and marching back to his ship. The soldiers followed, leaving the villagers to mourn their loss. Unbeknownst to Valen, his actions had set in motion a chain of events that would shake the very foundations of the Empire. News of Sarah's death spread quickly, carried by whispers and coded messages across the planet. It reached Marcus Kane in his secluded cabin, where he had lived in self-imposed exile for over a decade. Marcus was a man who had once been a legend, his name spoken with reverence and fear in equal measure. He had been Earth's greatest general, a master strategist who had led humanity through its darkest hour. But the cost of victory had been too high, and he had walked away, seeking solace in the quiet life of a farmer. When the news of Sarah's death reached him, it was as if a dormant volcano had erupted. He stood in the doorway of his cabin, the message clutched in his hand, his knuckles white with rage. His mind raced, memories of Sarah flooding back. Her laughter, her determination, her unwavering belief in him. She had been his light, the one thing that had kept him grounded. And now, she was gone, taken from him by the arrogance of an empire that thought itself untouchable. Marcus stepped inside, his movements deliberate, his mind already calculating his next steps. He opened a hidden compartment in the floor, revealing a cache of weapons and armor. He donned his old uniform, the fabric still bearing the scars of battles long past. As he strapped on his sidearm and slung a rifle over his shoulder, he felt a familiar fire burning in his chest. The Galactic Empire had made a grave mistake. They had killed a woman, not realizing they had awakened Earth's most ruthless general. Marcus Kane was no longer a farmer. He was a soldier, a warrior, and he would stop at nothing to make the Empire pay for what they had done. As he stepped out into the night, the stars above seemed to burn brighter, as if they too were ready for the storm that was coming. Marcus Kane had returned, and the galaxy would soon learn the price of crossing him. The section ends with Marcus setting out on his path of vengeance, his resolve unshakable and his purpose clear. The stage is set for the conflict to escalate, leaving readers eager to see how Marcus will bring the Empire to its knees. The Galactic Empire's outpost on the moon of Callisto was a sprawling complex of steel and glass, a testament to their technological prowess and their belief in their own invincibility. It was a hub of activity, with supply ships coming and going, soldiers patrolling the perimeter, and engineers maintaining the advanced machinery that kept the outpost running. To the Empire, it was just another cog in their vast machine, a minor outpost in their endless expansion. To Marcus Kane, it was the first domino in a line that would lead to the Empire's downfall. Marcus stood on a ridge overlooking the outpost, his silhouette blending seamlessly with the shadows of the lunar landscape. His armor, a patchwork of old Earth military gear and scavenged Empire tech, bore the scars of countless battles, but it was his eyes that betrayed the storm within. They were cold, calculating, and filled with a fury that had been simmering since the day he learned of Sarah's death. He had spent weeks gathering intelligence, recruiting former soldiers, and planning his next move. Now it was time to strike. Behind him, a small group of fighters waited, their faces hidden behind helmets and visors. They were a ragtag bunch, former soldiers and rebels who had answered Marcus's call. They had all lost something to the Empire, family, friends, homes, and they were ready to fight. Marcus turned to them, his voice low but commanding. "Remember the plan," he said. "We hit them hard and fast. No mercy, no hesitation. This is for Earth." The team nodded, their resolve unwavering. Marcus raised his hand, signaling the start of the operation. They moved like shadows, slipping past the Empire's perimeter defenses with ease. Marcus had studied their patrol patterns, their weak points, and their blind spots. He knew their tactics, their arrogance, and their over-reliance on technology. It was their greatest weakness, and he intended to exploit it. The first sign of trouble for the Empire came when the outpost's power grid went offline. The lights flickered and died, plunging the complex into darkness. Alarms blared, but they were quickly silenced as Marcus's team hacked into the system and disabled the security protocols. The Empire's soldiers scrambled, their confusion evident even through their helmets. They had never faced an enemy like this, an enemy who fought not with brute force, but with precision and cunning. Marcus led the charge, his rifle barking as he cut down the Empire's soldiers with ruthless efficiency. His movements were fluid, almost predatory, as he moved through the outpost, his team following close behind. They cleared room after room, their progress relentless. The Empire's soldiers fought back, but they were disorganized and unprepared. Marcus's team had the advantage of surprise, and they used it to devastating effect. In the control room, Marcus found what he was looking for, a terminal filled with data on the Empire's operations. He plugged in a device, his fingers flying over the keys as he downloaded everything he could. The Empire's secrets, their plans, their weaknesses. It was all there, ripe for the taking. As the data transferred, Marcus's mind raced, already formulating his next move. This was just the beginning. The sound of boots echoing down the hallway snapped Marcus back to the present. He turned, his rifle raised, just as a squad of Empire soldiers burst into the room. They were led by a captain, his armor adorned with the insignia of the Empire's elite forces. He sneered at Marcus, his voice dripping with contempt. "You think you can win? You're nothing but a relic, a ghost of a dead world." Marcus didn't respond. He didn't need to. His actions spoke louder than words. He fired, the shot striking the captain in the chest and sending him sprawling to the ground. The rest of the squad followed, their bodies falling like dominoes as Marcus and his team made quick work of them. The room fell silent, the only sound the hum of the terminal as it finished its download. Marcus removed the device, tucking it safely into his armor. He turned to his team, his expression grim but determined. "Let's move. We've got what we came for." They made their way back to the surface, the outpost now a smoldering ruin behind them. The Empire's reinforcements would arrive soon, but by then, Marcus and his team would be long gone. As they boarded their ship and lifted off, Marcus allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The Empire had underestimated him, and they had paid the price. But this was just the beginning. The war was far from over. Back on Earth, news of the attack spread like wildfire. The Empire's outpost on Callisto had been destroyed, its soldiers slaughtered, and its secrets stolen. The galaxy took notice, and for the first time in centuries, the Empire's invincibility was called into question. Who was this Marcus Kane, and how had he managed to strike such a blow against the mightiest force in the galaxy? Admiral Valen watched the reports from the bridge of his flagship, his expression darkening with each passing moment. He had dismissed Marcus as a minor threat, a relic of a bygone era. But now he was beginning to realize his mistake. Marcus Kane was no relic. He was a force of nature, a storm that could not be contained. And he was coming for the Empire. Valen clenched his fists, his mind racing. He had to stop Marcus before he could strike again. But deep down, he knew it wouldn't be easy. Marcus had the advantage of surprise, of knowledge, and of a rage that burned brighter than any star. The Empire had awakened a monster, and now they would have to face the consequences. As Marcus's ship disappeared into the void, the galaxy held its breath. The war had begun, and there was no turning back. Marcus Kane had returned, and he would not rest until the Empire was brought to its knees. The stage was set for a clash of titans, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Empire's capital planet, Etheris, was a gleaming jewel in the void, its surface a labyrinth of towering spires, sprawling cities, and impenetrable fortresses. It was the heart of the Empire, a symbol of its power and dominance. But beneath its glittering facade, cracks were beginning to show. The destruction of the Callisto outpost had sent shockwaves through the Empire's ranks, and whispers of rebellion were spreading like wildfire. The Empire's leaders, once confident in their invincibility, now found themselves facing an enemy they could not ignore: Marcus Kane. Marcus stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eclipse of Vengeance, a stolen Empire cruiser refitted for war. His eyes were fixed on the holographic display before him, the image of Etheris glowing ominously. Around him, his crew worked tirelessly, their movements precise and deliberate. They were a mix of former soldiers, rebels, and defectors, united by a common cause and a shared hatred for the Empire. Marcus had forged them into a formidable force, and now they were ready to strike at the heart of the beast. The plan was audacious, even by Marcus's standards. Etheris was heavily fortified, its defenses designed to repel any attack. But Marcus had spent months studying the Empire's tactics, their weaknesses, and their overconfidence. He knew that the key to victory lay not in brute force, but in precision and timing. The data he had stolen from Callisto had revealed a critical flaw in Etheris's defense grid, a vulnerability that could be exploited with the right tools and the right moment. As the Eclipse of Vengeance approached Etheris, Marcus's mind was a whirlwind of strategy and calculation. He had no room for doubt, no time for hesitation. This was the moment he had been preparing for, the moment he would avenge Sarah and bring the Empire to its knees. He turned to his second-in-command, a former Empire officer named Kale, who had defected after witnessing the Empire's atrocities firsthand. "Are the teams ready?" Marcus asked, his voice calm but firm. Kale nodded, his expression grim. "They're in position. We're waiting for your signal." Marcus took a deep breath, his eyes narrowing as he focused on the task at hand. Begin the operation. The first phase of the plan was a diversion. A small fleet of rebel ships, disguised as Empire vessels, launched a coordinated attack on Etheris's outer defenses. The Empire's forces responded immediately, their attention focused on the apparent threat. But it was all a ruse. While the Empire's fleet was engaged, Marcus's team infiltrated the planet's surface, using stolen access codes to bypass the security grid. Marcus led the ground assault himself, his armor gleaming in the dim light of Etheris's moon. His team moved like shadows, their movements swift and silent as they made their way to the Empire's central command center. The streets were eerily quiet, the citizens of Etheris hiding in fear as the battle raged above. Marcus's mind was focused, his senses heightened as he navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the city. The command center was a fortress within a fortress, its walls lined with heavy artillery and its halls patrolled by the Empire's elite guards. But Marcus had anticipated this. He had studied the blueprints, memorized the patrol routes, and identified the weak points. His team moved with precision, taking out the guards one by one as they made their way to the heart of the complex. Inside the command center, Admiral Valen watched the battle unfold on a massive holographic display. His face was a mask of fury and frustration as he barked orders to his subordinates. The Empire's forces were being outmaneuvered at every turn, their once impregnable defenses crumbling under the relentless assault. Valen's mind raced, searching for a way to turn the tide. But deep down, he knew the truth. Marcus Kane was unlike any enemy the Empire had ever faced. The sound of gunfire echoed through the corridors, snapping Valen out of his thoughts. He turned just as the doors to the command center were blown open, the force of the explosion sending shards of metal flying in all directions. Through the smoke and debris, Marcus emerged, his rifle raised and his eyes blazing with determination. Valen drew his sidearm, his hand trembling slightly as he aimed it at Marcus. "You're too late," Valen spat, his voice filled with venom. "The Empire will never fall." Marcus didn't respond. He simply fired, the shot striking Valen in the shoulder and sending him sprawling to the ground. The Admiral's sidearm clattered to the floor as Marcus stepped forward, his expression cold and unyielding. "The Empire's already fallen," Marcus said, his voice low and steady. "You just don't know it yet." Valen glared up at him, his eyes filled with hatred and desperation. "You think you've won? You're just one man. The Empire is eternal." Marcus knelt down, his face inches from Valen's. "The Empire is a lie," he said, his voice a whisper. "And I'm the one who's going to expose it." With that, Marcus stood and turned to the control panel, his fingers flying over the keys as he uploaded the data he had stolen from Callisto. The holographic display flickered and changed, showing the Empire's darkest secrets. Their atrocities, their lies, their crimes against humanity. The truth was laid bare for all to see, and the Empire's facade of invincibility crumbled. As the data spread across the galaxy, the Empire's forces began to falter. Soldiers defected, citizens rebelled, and the once mighty Empire found itself on the brink of collapse. Marcus watched as the holographic display showed the tide of the battle turning in their favor. He felt no joy, no satisfaction, only a grim sense of duty. This was what Sarah had died for. This was what he had fought for. The sound of footsteps behind him made Marcus turn. Kale stood there, his expression a mix of awe and relief. "It's done," Kale said. "The Empire's forces are retreating. We've won." Marcus nodded, his gaze returning to the holographic display. "This isn't over," he said. "The Empire may be broken, but there are still those who will fight to keep it alive. We need to be ready." Kale hesitated, then asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. What happens now? Marcus was silent for a moment, his mind racing with the weight of what they had accomplished, and what still lay ahead. Now, he said finally, we rebuild. We make sure that no one ever has to live under the Empire's boot again. As the eclipse of vengeance lifted off from Etheris, Marcus stood at the viewport, his eyes fixed on the stars. The galaxy was changing, and he had played a pivotal role in shaping its future. But he knew that the fight was far from over. There would be more battles, more sacrifices, more challenges to face. And he would be ready. The story ends with Marcus looking out at the vast expanse of space, his resolve unshaken and his purpose clear. The Empire had fallen, but the galaxy was still a dangerous place. And Marcus Kane would be there to protect it.